coming in on a Saturday.
Is it Saturday?
It's Saturday, and it's early, at least for me.
Well, it's before noon, so it's early for you.
Yeah, I'm an insurance agent, so this early stuff doesn't sit with me well. I just wonder why it is that God have to make fish hungry in the mornings, early mornings. But I guess I'll talk to him about that when I get there. So anyway, we're going to jump into our study again. From last week, Kyle and Jay were going through the
last month,
yeah, the week thing. I've got that right yet.
So you're not awake yet.
That's the problem. Yes, we did this at 1:00. I'd have it all down. So yeah, Jay and Kyle went over the prophecies last week, and what we're aiming at is this is a class called Defend Your Faith, but we're really kind of looking at apologetic stuff that we can talk with people about. And I think one of the big ones is the book that we get our faith from, and how that was written. And we like to run through that. Dirks gave me a book that I don't know whether you had read it yet or not, but you heard about it.
Well, I started it, but I hadn't gotten very far into it, and I told you about it.
Right. So. It's called The Christ Key, and it's written by
Chad Bird.
Can never get his name right.
You can't remember Bird.
Yeah, the Bird part.
Chad
that's
Bird.
The problem. Yeah.
And it's B-I-R-D. It's not even a weird spelling. So.
No? Okay. But anyway, he goes through the list, and he's putting these people together and showing you the similarities between the two of them. And me personally, I think when in Acts it talks about when the apostles had gotten to the point where there was a lot of people to feed, the apostle Peter in particular said that we need to get somebody to go and feed the people and wait on tables so that we can study the word. And I personally think that at that point, that was early.
Mm-hmm.
I personally think at that point that what Peter was studying was the First Testament, and trying to get those highlights where you see Christ in every single person that goes along that realm. We're only going to get to, I think, 4 of them today.
Yeah.
But we're told that every single one has a reference to Christ in it. So we're going to try to track those down over the next couple months, not weeks. So anyway, today we're going through with Adam as he relates to Noah and as both of them relate to Jesus. We'll do that one first. So that you've got the handout here that's got the story of Adam in it, but even before that, the gospel starts off with these verses, and I found these kind of interesting because I think it kind of relates to Noah as well. So it says, in the beginning, God created heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. I think that's one of the first references to Noah, and we'll get to that. But I think you guys got a handout. Does anybody want to read the Genesis 3, 8 through 12? It's on the paper. Go ahead, Richard.
Genesis 3, 8 to 12. And they heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God among the trees of the garden. Then the Lord God called to Adam and said to him, "Where are you?" So Adam said, "I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and I hid myself." And God said, "Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree of which I commanded you that you should not eat?" Then Adam said, "The woman who you gave to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I ate."
That's all we need to know. Women's fault. No.
Interesting that Adam got that part in there, isn't it? But this is shortly after the fall, after they have both eaten of the fruit they were told not to eat, and as the story proceeds along, we get to the part where the genealogies are there, and what do we see in the genealogies?
A lot of people that died.
A lot of death came around.
One of the interesting things is the first person born after creation that was, I should say, first person born after Adam died in creation was Noah. So there's a symbolism in that. Adam dies, Noah's born, and he's the salvation for this this next generation, next situation coming up.
Right. So they're related in that fashion, and like I said, I believe the apostles, the original, when they were studying those things, they were looking for these. We're going to go over a lot of these in the next couple months, but in particular that one. So Adam, he blew it. I'm not saying I wouldn't have blown it. I probably would have done the same thing because it was food, just like the donuts over there. I have a hard time resisting them as well. But Adam was the fall, and at that point, we get to Genesis 5-8. And who wants to read that for us? Let's read that part.
I'll read.
Go ahead.
Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. So the Lord said, I will destroy man who I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, creeping thing and birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord.
Right. So the picture here is that since the fall, the creation has been ruined, and God recognizes that, and we have to remember the level that it had fallen to. It says that every single thought and intent of man's heart was only evil all the time. So God's not trying to wipe things out because a few people are doing things wrong. God's wiping it out because everybody's doing things wrong.
Mm-hmm. There's a few faithful. We have to remember that too. Noah was part of that line. We have a few other ones that it talks about being there. So it's likely that Noah's grandfather and his father Lamech,
Yeah.
And grandfather and
Enoch, of course.
Enoch, yeah,
Enoch.
that's what I'm thinking of. Enoch.
God took him home.
And a few other ones were there, but by the time Noah comes along, there's no one else. By the time he's ready to go into the ark, there's no one else alive that is going to be considered what God says here, grace in the eyes of the Lord, because of how they're living. Everybody else is living like they were born in L.A. or Hollywood.
Exactly, or downtown New York.
And wasn't Noah the son of Enoch?
No, he's the son of Lamech.
He's a grandson of Enoch.
Grandson.
Yeah,
of Enoch.
that line just flows. Yeah. But at this point, now God has now decided that the creation that he made originally, despite the fact that he warned Adam not to do this, that the creation is now corrupt. And originally, God's plan was to walk with his creation, because that's what it talks about in the verse we just read, that God was walking with his creation. He was making things for them, showing them how to garden and the rest of the things. This is what God had in mind at the outset, was to walk with his creation. But
and one of the things I think that was great about that, that God's walking with Adam and he's teaching him about these plants and so on that God created and put there, and Adam's getting to know them, and I bet that anything that Adam planted grew.
Yeah.
I don't have that ability.
So say the other way around.
I think it's just talking to the original gardener
right.
about what grows in the garden, how to tend it, I think had to be just incredible too.
Yeah.
And sometimes we overlook some of that issue because of what happened. And one of the things about the garden is we're looking forward to the next garden that we're going to be in heaven, where we will talk to the Creator about how all this works.
Right. And then I see the next development that God has. God originally had the creation, and the start of it was the Holy Spirit was hovering over the face of the waters. What does God do next? God tells Noah to build an ark. It takes him 100 years to build the ark. Very patient man. But at that point, what does God do? God brings his creation back into the ark. He closes the door, and what happens after that? The ark is floating over what? The deep, the waters. So his creation is the same again. He's making it again, but he's doing it as a picture of the original creation he made, trying to revive it again.
Yeah, but you know why it took him so long to build it?
No.
He had to keep making trips to Home Depot to get supplies. So, but
Probably it. If Monita was only there, he
yeah,
would have got his
Monita was
stuff
there. He
real
would have got his
fast.
stuff.
Yeah.
But that's a great image because God hovers over the face of the waters and starts creation. Then we have the redemption in Noah, for this generation coming up, and it's over water.
The water hovering over the face of the deep.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, God also makes his creation like he was going to have it. He was going to have it in that the creation was there and it was flourishing. And now it flourishes a little bit in that there's some ideas as far as what happened at the end of the original creation. And if you guys wanted to look at that, you might want to look up what was his name again?
Chadbert?
No,
Or what?
no, the guy that Quinonia, khouse.org, Chuck Missler. He's got some very interesting ideas on what was going on at that point where the creation fell and became evil. And I want to look that one up because it's very interesting. We didn't bring it up today because we got plenty, but look that up. It's pretty interesting what his causation was for all this, and the fact that he names things throughout the Genesis account, especially the genealogies. So, let's see, where are we going next? So, as we know, Jesus was the second Adam to remove the curse completely. But just as Noah had been instructed to do in the form of the ark, Hebrews chapter 11. Do we got that on here?
That's on the bottom. I didn't highlight that out.
Okay. I'll just read it. I've got it here. By faith, Noah, being divinely warned of things not yet seen, moved with godly fear, prepared an ark for the saving of his household, by which he condemned the world, became heir of righteousness, which is according to faith. And Hebrews 11:6 talks about Jesus said that without faith, no one can please God. So Adam lost his faith. He was warned not to do something, and his faith disappeared, at least for that point. But instead Noah, as it says here, he was building this ark for 100 years. He had faith that this was going to happen. It had never rained before. At that point, that's what the Bible tells us. It's never rained before. And he was spending 100 years with this boat and telling people that it's going to rain. Now, how he described rain, I don't know. Water falling out of the sky. If I would have been there and not rained yet, I probably wouldn't have believed it either. You're going to do what? Water's going to fall out of the sky, right?
Yeah, right.
Why is it staying up there like that? But Noah was a man who believed God, was dedicated to fact what God made him, what God had him to do, because he told him, he said, go build an ark. And he may have told him how long it was going to be before he got it built. And he had to get his sons to help him, which may be a problem right there. But at that point, Noah followed through with what God had asked him to do. And what was the result?
Result is a restoration. You know, the evil was destroyed. Noah came out. Of course, he, being a man, brought evil with him. But he came out, and everything was cleansed. Everything was new. And it's so new that they come out, and it's day one, is what it says.
Yeah.
This is the first day.
First day.
Coming out with this.
And not only just the people, but Noah also saved all the animals as well, including golden retrievers. Not sure they were around by then, but
I don't know. Canine.
I have a golden retriever, is why I say that.
Yeah.
But yes, he saved all the animals as well, the part of God's creation that had originally gone astray. And maybe the animals really weren't affected as much as what the people were. So the people drug it into that fall, and God's people are going to bring it back out of that too. He hopes that we're going to help his creation to flourish.
Well, what's it say about God's command after the flood recedes, and he goes out, and it says that God commanded him something about all the grain of the earth you can have.
Yes. Yeah.
I've given you food just as I've given you grain and vegetables. You know, all the animals of the earth, all the birds of the sky, small mammals, the fish of the seas. So he says whatever comes out of the ground you can have. Where the green things come up. Where does that come up before? A guy named Adam.
Yeah.
You can have everything here, except for that one.
Except for that one. And now God made that choice I've been asked several times, why is it that evil's in the world? When people ask me that. I talk to atheists a lot. But people ask me that, why? Okay, so God's so good, why is evil here? And evil's here because of one man's decision. There was an election held.
Mm-hmm.
In Genesis chapter 3, there was an election held. God was on one side and the serpent was on the other. And we're going to vote now on which way we're going to go. And God lost that election 2-0. And since then, now we have evil. And again, it's our ability to choose. Noah could have decided they didn't want to spend 100 years building an ark. He could have decided that because he did have free will, but he didn't. He decided he was going to follow God.
Yeah, he could have said, "I don't want to go for wood."
Our that was a good one. I like that one.
Yeah.
You could have said Home Depot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He
Home
said,
Depot's
"Nah, it's too
closed
far
today."
away. Forget it."
They don't deliver on
Yeah.
Sundays.
But Adam made the choice, and he was given the choice by God. He said, and why is it that the tree of knowledge of good and evil was there? Because you have to have a choice. God has a choice.
Yeah,
to
otherwise
make.
we're robots. We're automatons. We're
Yeah.
just flesh robots.
Right. He made us to be a certain thing, and we're like the robots today
Mm-hmm.
that the program, they do certain things. And that's the
And
only
fall
thing they
down.
can do.
They do
And
certain things and fall down. That's
and they
kind of
fall
what
down,
man
yes.
did too.
But God didn't want it that way. God wanted it that we can make a choice to either follow him or to not follow him. So, and that's the only point for love. God's a God of love, so he has to have that choice to be able to make. Speaking of robots, I don't know how many of you guys were watching the news last night, but the Buddhists have had their first robot that came into Buddhism's faith. A robot.
Of the robot's free will, of course.
Yeah. I don't know where that
But
came
it's
out of my
pretty easy
mind.
because all they have to do is sit there and run a tape loop, then they're going,
Yeah,
something like that.
I think something like that, right? Yeah, and they programmed the robot so we could do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's sidetracked here. But the last part of this is just that Jesus is a picture of the ark for all of humanity. Jesus came and he's going to take us home. That's the other picture of what the ark is, or another picture that the ark makes is the rapture, because people were taken from the destruction and put into the ark, and they're going to ride out the ark for that period of time. And that's exactly what Jesus is doing. And as the apostles were given the Holy Spirit so as to understand what had been performed in front of them, I believe these pictures were given to them to make them realize the entire picture being painted for them, so they would realize the full picture. And when we look at Jesus in the biblical text, the First and Second Testament testify of him. And it's not just the Second Testament, which New Testament, I call it First and Second. But the First Testament was the one they were studying, and I believe this is not the only picture. I think there's Melchizedek coming up. So
Yeah.
start off on that one.
I like these two things we have. The
Yeah,
one from
go.
Matthew,
Yes.
Matthew 24:37-39. But as the days of Noah were, so also will be the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark. Did not know until the flood came and took them all away, so also will be the coming of man be.
And
So I think what it's talking about is
Yeah.
that people were living their lives. And they're living their lives as they deem fit, not considering anything was going to happen. And what's happening, time now. Everybody's just living their life like, oh, no big deal. We don't have to worry about the second coming. Or when Jesus comes, then I'll turn my life over to him when he's happening. But by then it's going to be too late. How many people were pounding on the door of the ark going, hey, I'm getting wet out here.
Yeah, I'm getting wet out here.
Yeah.
And I do believe some people came to faith during that. I think there's a section of one of Peter's writings, and the fact that he says that there were some saved from the flood. And I believe that God did see that he showed these people, and Noah was a preacher of righteousness. So he was telling people what was coming. They didn't believe him. They thought he was a kook. But once it started raining, then they started thinking, well, that old idiot, he was right.
Yeah.
He was telling us the truth. And I do believe some of the people in the flood, I do believe some of them changed their mind and were saved, and I think we'll see them when we get home. But,
Well, and I think that passage from 2 Peter 3 that we have here, kind of touches on that.
Yeah.
The people willfully forgot.
Right.
Doesn't mean they didn't know. They willfully forgot. They were living their lives as, I want to live it like this.
Right.
You can't tell me how I live. I'm a free
Right.
person, kind of thing. And when the flood comes, then they go, oh no, I may have been wrong on this decision, and are pounding on the door and saved. And I think that's the way it's going to be before Christ returns again.
The rapture.
Is that there's going to be a lot of people that are going, oh, wait a minute here.
Mm-hmm.
I've known all this stuff. I've just been ignoring it because I thought it was just, spaghetti monster in the sky thing, but
Yeah.
I know it all. I know what's happening with this. So I need to turn my life around. And I think there's going to be people saved in that too.
I think that's a picture of the rapture.
Yeah.
All these Christians disappear all at one time. And, a lot of people are going to say, okay, well, aliens came and took them, this and that. But there's going to be a lot of people that, like Dirk said, they weren't willing to commit at that point. But they're going to look at it like they looked at Noah. This crazy nut told me that the rain was going to fall from the sky and we're all going to get flooded. And unfortunately, it happened. And the crazy nuts in this room right now have been telling people about God and about the fact that the revelation and that rapture is going to come. And when it does come, they're going to be having the same reaction that the people that in the flood came. They said, what happened? That crazy nut that was telling me about Jesus, he was right. I never thought he was right, but in fact, he was telling me the truth.
I think that's why it's important to witness to people.
Yeah.
Even if they don't turn their lives over to Christ when you are witnessing, you're planting seeds. You're giving them information that at some point in their life, when they're going to meet Jesus, they're sitting in that wreck of a car bleeding to death,
Right.
that doesn't pop into their mind. Hey, my end is coming.
Yeah.
I need to seek Christ.
Yeah, maybe he was right.
Yeah.
Maybe that lady that talked to me about Jesus, she was right. She was telling me the truth. And now that my last breath is coming, Lord, can I, like the thief on the cross?
Well, I worked as a missionary in Japan for a couple of years, and one of the places I stayed was a house in a religious compound where they actually ran the language school there for the missionaries. But that was a house that John Lennon, when he was visiting Japan, would go to Bible study at.
Wow.
Cool. And I talked to one of the missionaries that had taught that study, and having John Lennon there, and I asked him about that. I said, well, you think he ever came to faith? He goes, I can't say that he did. But you can't tell me when he was laying in front of the Dakota with his life bleeding out of him, that he didn't turn his life over to Christ, because he knew what he had to do. He knew what was required.
Yeah.
And that's where he said, this is what we need to do. We need to witness to people so they know what's required when that time comes.
Right.
When they're faced with that moment.
And remind them about the thief on the cross.
Yeah. Yeah, the very last
even
moment.
at the very last moment, that's still fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then 2 Peter talks about it. 2 Peter 3:5-7. I'll read that one. For this they willfully forgot by the word of God the heavens were of old, and the earth standing out of the water and in the water, by which the world then perished, being flooded with water. But the heavens and the earth are now preserved by the same word, are reserved for fire until the day of judgment and perdition of ungodly men. And Noah 11:7. By faith Noah, being divinely warned of things he had not seen, moved with godly fear, prepared the ark for the saving of the household. Next page.
By which
the condemned world became the righteousness which is according to faith. I think we may have read that one already, but anyway.
Yeah.
Second time is not a bad idea.
No, it's all good.
Yeah.
Don't read the Bible just once. Read it many times.
Many times, yes. Okay, so move on to Melchizedek. You want to jump in on Melchizedek for us, Stark?
Melchizedek. Melchizedek's an interesting character. Let me go to my notes. He's called the Prince of or the King of Salem, and priest of God Most High.
Mm-hmm.
But the interesting thing is, he wasn't a Jew. He's a Gentile. He's a Canaanite king.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we get to the New Testament, it says that Jesus is patterned after Melchizedek. He's not patterned after Aaron. He's patterned after a
Gentile
priest who is serving everybody for God.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the interesting things about him. Now, we start off in Genesis 14 with who Melchizedek is. And so Abram has been out rescuing his son Lot because his son was not a very good real estate agent and bought in the wrong area of the town.
That's for sure.
So he was getting trampled a lot from his nephew. Yeah, his nephew. I'm sorry, his nephew. Out getting trampled a lot by being in Sodom too much. So he's coming back from rescuing him, and he stops by this area that's called Salem. Genesis 14:18 through 20. Then Melchizedek, son of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was a priest of the God Most High. And he blessed him, saying, Blessed be Abraham of the God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth. And blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. So here we have Melchizedek coming out and blessing Abram, who's the father of the Jews, right? But he's not Jewish.
Not Jewish. And
He's
Abraham,
coming out, and Abraham is, and he's
And
the
he-
father of the nation.
and Abraham instantly recognizes the fact that this is a priest most high.
Yes, yes,
Um,
and if you read on, that's what we had for the. I had to cut down, otherwise it would be, having 12 pages of this. But he goes out and he says, "I'll give you a tenth of all I have, all the spoils that I have, to bless you for blessing me." And so this is something that we see carried through throughout the Bible, how Jesus is in the order of Melchizedek.
Like
That-
king and priest, like
king and
Jesus, Melchizedek held both roles simultaneously, combining the royal authority, king of Salem, along with the priestly intercession. He accepted a tithe. And name and title as king of Salem, peace, the king of righteousness, meaning of Melchizedek, he mirrors Jesus, the Prince of Peace and righteous Messiah. And also eternal priesthood. Hebrews 7:3 describes him as without father, without mother, without genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, portraying him as a figure representing an eternal, non-hereditary priesthood.
Now, one of the things that's interesting too is this whole thing about Melchizedek. We have 3 verses that tell us about Melchizedek in Genesis. 3 verses.
Yeah, that's it.
Then we have Psalm 110, which is talking about Melchizedek. There's 4 of them and references in the New Testament. We have more references than we do have about who Melchizedek actually was, because he played such an important part in this pointing to Christ and pointing to who Christ would be. So in Psalm 110, verses 1 through 4, we have this. The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand, till I make your enemies your footstool. The Lord shall send the rod of your strength out of Zion, rule in the midst of your enemies. Your people shall be volunteers in your day of power. The beauties of your holiness from the womb to the morning, you have the dew of your youth. And the Lord has sworn not to relent. You are priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek.
Yes.
So one of the important things about this, number one, Psalm 110 is one of the most quoted passages in the New Testament.
Jesus quoted
Or
that
the
a
Second
lot.
Testament,
Yes.
or what do you? How do you
Second, yeah.
Second Testament. So it's quoted a lot in the Second Testament. But the interesting thing about Psalm 110 is it's not only pointing out Melchizedek as the king and priest forever, but also there's references to Abram and how he is the founder of nations.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's all in there. And then, and what the psalmist is saying is both of these are pointing to Jesus.
Right.
Both of these mighty men that are representative of God's grace on earth.
And I've heard different opinions on Melchizedek. Whether Melchizedek was just exactly what is described here, a priest, but having no beginning and no end. There are some that believe this is Christophany, a picture of Christ in the Old Testament. But there's also some that don't. I believe the pastor Ed, he doesn't believe that's the case. He doesn't believe that Melchizedek was actually Christ in an appearance in the First Testament. He doesn't believe that. There are some that do. But if it is, then it's not the only time that happened, because Abraham was going to meet Christ in just a couple chapters after. Actually, it was before when the Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed. So he's going to meet Christ at some point in the future, and this may be another time that we find that out. But we'll find that out later when we get home. Yeah.
I heard a comment. I don't know if it's correct, and I want to run it by you guys. One of the guys I listened to, I think it's Skip, but I'm not 100% with him, that when
Jerusalem.
Yeah, that's what they
I
think.
found that quite like, wow.
We do believe that that is the case, and possibly Jerusalem had some I don't know how you'd call that. It's interesting with Melchizedek on the fact that he's prior to any of the law being explained, being brought out by Moses. He's this character that shows up and talks about him being from Salem, and we can think that that might be Jerusalem. But
What's interesting is such a huge character in this, and only 3 verses.
Yeah.
But such a huge character that has a huge impact on what's going on throughout this.
Right.
You know, David quotes him in the New Testament or Second Testament. He talks about a lot.
Yeah.
In there, who this guy was, what was the representation of it, and it's obvious that he was important because Abram stops and gives him a tenth of all the spoils.
And there's no discussion beforehand. He just
no, like, hey, you're crossing through my territory.
Who are you? Yeah.
Yeah, you got to give me 10% tax.
Right.
No, it's just that he shows up and the guy brings out bread and wine. Oddly symbolic, is that not?
Yes, very symbolic.
And Abram gives him a tenth of the spoils. So it has a huge impact on who this guy is and who he represents, pointing to Christ.
Mm-hmm. And bringing out the wine, the bread and wine. That's a picture of Christ, and it's so interesting that the whole thing, the entire book, is on Christ, and they get this guy that is such a picture, but as you say, there's so little actually said about him.
Yeah. Most of what we have is actually from the Second Testament.
Yes, that's right.
You know, and Jesus used this to explain who he was too. And so it's interesting that Jesus is explaining this whole thing about who he is based on a character, the 3 verses that shows up in Abram blesses.
Yeah. Yep.
So Matthew 22:41 through 46.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
While the Pharisees were gathered together, Jesus asked them, saying, "What do you think about the Christ? Whose son is he?" They said to him, "The son of David." And he said to him, "Then how does David in spirit call him Lord, saying, 'The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand, till I make your enemies your footstool'? If David calls him Lord, how is he his son?" And no one was able to answer him a word, for from that day on he did not dare question him anymore. So it's referring back to this Psalm 110, 1 through 4. You know, I'll make your enemies, sit at my right hand, I'll tell him, make your enemies my footstool. Lord saying to my Lord, you're going to sit at my right hand. You're going to be more powerful than this. And he's saying, how can I be the son of David if he's more powerful than David? And stronger than David and sits at the right hand of God. So how can he be that? But in that same passage, it goes down to says, you're a priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek. Yeah. That's not randomly there. That's there because there's a purpose in what God is teaching us. Not only is he the son of David, but superior to David because he's of God, but he's also a priest in the order of Melchizedek, who again was not a Jewish priest, not in the order of Aaron, but in the order of God.
Right, and that's also the reflection of Jesus. Actually, he did not come from the Aaronic priesthood. He was the tribe of Judah.
Yeah.
So that's, again, it's showing that this priest, this high priest, doesn't necessarily have to be Jewish. While the Jewish people had that direction given to them by God, but when it comes down to the priest of the Most High, he's not coming from that line anymore. He's coming from the line of Judah. And they're early in Genesis, before Jacob even has any of these kids, this is already being proclaimed.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
All right, so we'll move on to, I think the guys probably got some questions about all this stuff. We're going to have a time towards the end here, about 10 minutes or so. We'll get to some questions. But our next one that we wanted to run through is Moses to Gideon to Messiah. So interesting that Gideon and Moses, if you look at the two of those guys, both these men were hesitant to do what God was asking them to do. Moses is standing at the burning bush, and this bush is burning and it's not being consumed, and there's voices coming out of it. And what is Moses' reaction? I don't think I can do it.
And when God says, go before Pharaoh.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what to say. No, I don't speak very good. I don't talk really cool. So get somebody else, man.
Yeah.
You know,
get somebody else to do this. And God said, who was it that made your mouth?
Yeah.
I believe that was me. I can make things. I can have you speak the way I want you to speak, and that's something important for us to remember. Is that when we are witnessing to people.
Well, I think the other funny
Yeah.
thing is what was Moses doing in the desert? There, he was running from Egypt,
Yeah.
from
Mhm.
something he had done in Egypt. He was hiding.
Right.
Where does God find Gideon? Hiding.
Hiding. Yeah, and the two of them are so similar. Gideon is hiding because the Midianites had pretty much taken over the area, and what is he referred to as God? This righteous man, this righteous soldier.
Yeah,
Or
he's kind of saying
something.
this brave,
Yeah,
righteous
he's this brave,
man.
righteous man.
You're so brave.
It's interesting where Gideon's really at, because when they were actually trying to get the wheat and the tares to be separated, they were throwing them up in the air out in the open, so the wind would actually take them and distribute them. Where's Gideon at? He's in a room trying to get this done, throwing the stuff up where there's no wind flowing or anything else. But Gideon is just so afraid, and I would be too. Gideon's so afraid to be outside because the Midianites are around. So he's reluctant. And when God asks him to go, he says, what? He said to him, my Lord, how can I save Israel? Indeed, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am least in my father's house. So again, this is Moses and Gideon are being pictured between the two of them. Now, things change. Once they decide, okay, God, and both of them do this thing about testing. Moses talks about, okay, well, give me a sign why it is you. And God takes his staff and makes it into a snake, and then he gives him a leprous arm, and he heals them both, of course. And what Gideon does, I love Gideon. He's such a cool guy. He says, okay, well,
So much faith.
yeah, so much faith.
That's why I like him.
Yeah. Go ahead and read a little bit of Gideon if you brought it up.
I'm not. That's
You're not on that part. Okay. So Gideon, he's the one that takes out the fleece, and he has God. Okay, I'm going to lay the fleece out in the yard, and if you can do this, then make the yard completely covered with water, but my fleece dry. So Gideon gets up in the morning, goes out, and this is exactly what he sees. Is that enough for him? No. So okay, so now I'm going to lay the fleece out in the yard, and I want the fleece to be wet, but everything else to be dry. So he wakes up in the morning, comes out, and sure enough, there it is. But that's not the end. He keeps on with this thing. But you know what? I am critiquing him a little bit to show that just like us, we don't always get the fact that God's able to do what he needs to do. And Gideon and Moses are both seeing this thing, but they also both are used by God to show that the pagan cults, with Moses, it's the fact that God goes in and destroys 10 of the Egyptian gods right in front of their eyes so they can see. But also after Gideon is going through this process of getting his act together, but he also goes out and destroys this altar to Baal. And I thought that was an interesting story, because he destroys this altar of Baal, and the people that are worshiping Baal, they get all upset. So they start yelling at his dad, saying, bring Gideon out here. We're going to kill him because he destroyed Baal. And his dad talked to them. I love this reaction. His dad talked to him and says, well, your God can't take care of himself. You have to come out and take care of him for you. You can't come.
Yeah, he can't do
Baal
it
can't take care of himself. I thought that was an excellent response.
Yeah, and the parallel in that is Moses taking the golden calf that Aaron had made and melting it down and beating it up and saying, here, you want this gold so bad? You can drink it.
There you go. And it was interesting when Moses challenged Aaron, who made the calf. Aaron said, we just threw it in the fire and it just appeared. I didn't know evolution was around at that point.
But one of the other things I think it's interesting in this story of Gideon is when he goes to fight the battle, and he has 3,000 men or so, a bunch of them.
30, I think.
And God said, "Keep cutting it down, keep cutting it down." So all he has left is a bunch of old fat guys that can't run. They
can't bend over to get in the water. They can't do anything.
And so that's who he has for his army. Mm-hmm. And what do they have for weapons? Pots and torches.
Torches, yeah.
And he hides them in there, and they go out, and they, at the sound of the trumpet, they break the pots, and torches all light up, and all the Midianites go crazy and kill each other.
Yeah.
In Isaiah 9, which is talking about the birth of Christ, because it says in there, if we start verse 1, nevertheless, the time of darkness and despair will not go on forever. The land of Zebulun and Naphtali will be humbled, but there will be a time in the future when Galilee of the Gentiles, which lies along the road that runs between the Jordan and the sea, will be filled with glory. Let's see, where was Jesus from? Gary of Galilee, yeah. Verse 2, the people who walk in darkness have seen a great light. For those who live in a land of deep darkness, the light will shine. So what happens when Gideon's fighting these things?
Yeah.
Breaks, all of a sudden there's great light, and God's redemption comes.
Yeah.
It's an odd way of saving them.
Right.
What happens to Moses when he's going to cross into the desert, the wilderness?
Mm-hmm.
Comes up upon the sea, and the people say, what, there are not enough graves back in Egypt? You just want to bury us here?
Right.
How many of those guys that were dismissed and went home were going, you're going to fight with those guys? You can't be serious. So, God just uses this. He talks about how breaking the yoke of slavery and the heavy burden from their shoulders.
Right.
Let's talk about Christ coming, but it's also talking about being under the rule of the Egyptians, being under the rule of the Midianites, having to fight those and being taken that way. But Jesus, they're talking about how this is going to happen in religious context.
Right.
It's going to break the rules and the heavy burden placed upon humanity. So,
and it's interesting that with Moses and Jesus, both of them have control over the seas. Moses parted the Red Sea for them to get across, and Jesus came and walked on the water and was control of the sea as he needed to be, calm the storms, had control over the water. So there's instances like that where the people that are mentioned in the First Testament, Moses maybe being one of two of the biggest examples. We'll get to David probably next. He maybe even a bigger example. But Moses, throughout his progress, as at first he didn't want to do this at all, but as Moses goes along, he gets better and better as his faith builds. He sees things done right in front of him, such as the parting of the Red Sea and the pillars of fire at night and the pillar of smoke during the day, leading him where he wanted it to go. And Moses is getting better and better at trusting God. He blows it at one point, but understandable. But his faith is growing. Yeah, maybe several times.
But his faith is growing.
Faith is growing, and it comes to the point where he's a good picture to these guys. Like I said, when Peter's saying that they're going in to study, the apostles are going in to study, these are the things they see. They see these links, because Moses, to the Jewish people, if he wasn't God, he was darn close. That's the way they looked at him. They felt that he was it. But as they look at these things, they see that Moses is portraying that same thing, and Moses tells them straight out, God says through Moses, I'm going to send you a prophet that if you listen to him, everything will go well for you. And that's what Moses is talking about it, and Jesus talks about it as well when he's confronting the Pharisees. He basically says, you talk about Moses and the writing of the scripts, but Moses spoke of me. And he tells them that, and the apostles are standing around listening to this, listening to Jesus say that Moses wrote about me, even though Moses had been gone for 1,500 years at that point. And also the fact that Jesus says in front of the Pharisees again that before Abraham was, I am. So these guys are listening to this and they're saying, what do you mean I am? You were born in 32 years ago, you were born. What are you talking about? But now they're coming in and they're studying these things and seeing the relationships that are there and how God has made his story complete throughout time, telling people, and the same authorship is going on. The Holy Spirit is the author of all these things and trying to show us things that we can believe and understand.
We kind of skipped over the Joseph thing. Do you want to look at that quick?
If we got time,
we have a few minutes.
Maybe Isaac. You want to do Isaac because it's a little faster?
I did Joseph. So
you did Joseph? Okay, go ahead.
For you.
I'm good with that. Go ahead.
Well, we talk about Joseph, and everybody knows Joseph's story. The favorite son of the favorite wife. And so he's walking around. He gets a coat of many colors, which is not, by the way, the homosexual flag. It just means that he was favored because to have clothes that were dyed different colors was extremely extravagant at the time. So he has this coat of many colors, and his brothers are notably jealous of him. And I think that Joseph is kind of a twit. He's the guy that spies on goes and reports to daddy about what his brothers are doing.
Right.
And so they don't like him very well.
No, understandably so.
So he shows up in the coat, and they decide, hey, let's get rid of him. Let's, kill him.
Well, right before that, he's saying that you guys are all going to worship me.
The whole
you
thing.
guys are all going to worship me.
You're all going to worship me. You're
And
going
his
to fall
brothers
down. The mom and dad, and they're going, you arrogant
His
little.
brothers looked at each other and said, okay, we're going to take care of worshiping you, okay, Joseph?
Yeah. Yeah, so they
We're going to worship you in the pit.
So throw him into the pit. Reuben's going to come and rescue him later, but along comes some traders from what country was that? Midian?
Midian.
Yes. How odd. So some Midian traders come along. They sell him to him, and they take him to Egypt and sell him there. Goes through all this stuff in Egypt, being imprisoned, and then but always honoring God in all he did. And finally gets brought before the Pharaoh, and he prophesies to Pharaoh about the famine coming up and take care of that. Then his brothers show up. And his brothers come before him, begging him. Now, he looks more like an Egyptian than a Jew at this point, probably has a shaved head, which is a good look, by the way. And it's probably tan from being in the sun and wearing the makeup that the rulers of
Did he have a beard, though?
Maybe
No,
just that little
not.
short one with the snakes things in it. I don't know. So they come before him. They don't recognize him, and they're not allowed to stare directly at him either, so they didn't hear or understand.
And he's speaking to them in Egyptian.
Speaking to them in Egyptian, had translator, so they don't know who it is. And they're going, oh my goodness, they're bowing before him and begging him, and and he says, well, and then he puts a cup in their saddlebags that you're trying to steal from me. I'm going to keep him. No, don't take him. That's my father's favorite, and he's going to, Benjamin. And so they go through all this stuff, and finally we get to one of my favorite passages about this in Genesis 37, verses 23 through 28. So it came to pass when Joseph had come to his brothers that they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the tunic of many colors that was on him, and they cast him down and took him into the pit. The pit was empty. There's no water in it. And then let's skip to the next one, 45, verses 1 through 5. Then Joseph could not restrain himself before all those who stood by him and cried out, make everyone go out from me. So no one stood with him while Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept aloud. The Egyptians in the house of Pharaoh heard it. Then Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Does my father still live? But his brothers would not answer him, for they were dismayed by his presence. Oh no. And Joseph said to his brothers, please come near me. And they came near, and he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. But now do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourselves, because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. This is an incredible picture of Christ in this. He wept aloud with this. Jesus wept over Jerusalem.
Right.
Cried over what was going to happen to it. And he hears this. And his brothers who had put him up there for this evil thing, God used for good. Jesus comes, he's beaten, he's tortured, he's put on a cross, crucified.
And what
for
is
our redemption?
And what do the brothers represent? The brothers represent the Jewish tribes. And who was it that put Jesus on the cross? The Jewish tribes put him on the cross. So it's also a picture of the fact that the Jewish tribes didn't recognize, just like they didn't recognize Joseph, they didn't recognize the fact that Jesus was the Christ.
Yes.
And they crucified him for it. And these guys are doing the same thing. All they're trying to do when they first got Joseph, and yeah, he was being a little bit arrogant, but either way, it's a picture of the Jewish tribes discarding the Messiah into the ditch.
Discarding the chosen one. Because that's really what Joseph was representing, was the chosen one.
Into a ditch. And what's the ditch? Where was Jesus thrown? He was into a grave, just like a ditch.
Grave, yes.
So it's a picture again. And the picture is the fact that, but it also states that Joseph takes out the removes the disguise, speaks in regular language to them, and what do? Now they recognize him.
Well, at first it says they didn't answer him, for they're afraid. They're dismayed.
Yeah.
Oh, is he really still mad about that whole throwing in the pit and selling you into slavery for all this time joke?
Did we kill the Messiah?
Yeah. Well, and I think that, but after that, I think is one of the most interesting things when it says, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold in Egypt. Don't be grieved or angry with yourselves. So I think this is talking about the redemption of Israel also.
Right.
You know, we have so many people that you know, as we said, the tribes represent the 12 tribes that crucified Jesus, and there are churches that say, well, the Jews are cursed because of that. But it says here, no. God has forgiveness for them, because what they meant for evil,
God meant it for good.
God meant it for good.
Yeah. And there's several other items that talk about the relationship as well, because at one point Jesus comes to and where was Joseph crucified? Where was Joseph sent? Joseph was sent to the Gentiles, and he was administrating for them and making their lives better. And when the Jews come, he does the same thing. So it's a picture of Christ after he was crucified.
Yeah, and how did he make it better? When they believed what he was telling them.
They believe it, yeah. When they finally figured out this is the guy that we tried to throw in the pit, and now he's going to bless us. And that's exactly what Joseph wanted to do. That told me to do that. Sorry, hon. It's my wife told me to put it on.
Oh, she just texted you to say that? No, just kidding. Called you up.
Yeah.
Kelly, is your phone on?
So there's some other things we can go through with Joseph. We'll get some more of it.
Yeah.
But usually about 15 after, we try to open this up to
and it's about that time.
Questions. So let's do that. If you guys got any questions, go right ahead.
Well, just an observation.
Brian.
When you were talking about the 100 years that Noah spent building the ark, well, the lifespan of those people at the time, wasn't it something in the neighborhood of 800 or 900 years?
Yeah.
So,
well, it talks about Noah when he got onto the ark before the flood was 600.
Yeah.
When he got off, he was 601.
So 100 years working on it would have been like spending 10 years on working on an ark, right?
Yeah. They had a different idea of time, right?
Yeah.
But I just thought that was interesting because now we look at and say, well, 100 years, man, that's a total lifespan.
Well, we know somebody in here that's saying 6 weeks. I don't know if I can wait that long. It's horrible. So long.
Oh yes.
A friend of ours whose house had some water damage from broken pipes and having some remanding done, I think it's called.
Yes, yeah.
And so she has to stay in a motel for 6 weeks, and I don't know how long I can stand this.
Wait for the evil insurance company to get done with repairing her house.
Yeah, evil.
So yeah.
Anyone
else? Daniel?
So I was wondering your thoughts about the interview with Dr. Rana, if you wanted to maybe go over that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. We did get a chance to interview Dr. Fuzz Rana. He's representative of the Reasons to Believe ministry. We got a chance to talk to the names are escaping me now because this was
over a week ago.
Yeah, over a week ago. So therefore the names escape me. But we also interviewed Hugh Ross as well. He used to run the department. And the interesting thing that I got about it, this is kind of off subject, but we'll just talk about it for a minute. The interesting thing that I got about it is that as you listen to the secular world talk about human beings, I'm a young earth creationist, so let me just say that first. But as you listen to the secular world talk about human beings, they're talking about them being around for 300,000 or 400,000 years. Two or 3 decades ago, they were talking about being around for 3 or 4 million years. But as I listen to even this Reasons to Believe, which is not a young earth creationist organization, but when we talk to them about it, and as you look at how secularism is going right now, secularism is coming away from those long periods of time where humans have been around, and it's coming further and further back to where the Bible talks about. Dr. Ramana, he said, well, human beings could be around, could have started anywhere from 100,000 years ago to 10,000 years ago. And that was the part that I really took in as something that makes me more aware of the fact that I think secularism is coming back to the fact that what the Bible talks about human beings around only for a short time.
Mhm.
So interesting interview. That was me and Daniel and Jay. Jay's off surfing right now, and I think Costa Rica.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was an interesting interview. Very, very nice man. He spent time with us answering our questions and sat with us for what, hour and 20 minutes or something?
Yep, hour and
So,
20 minutes.
yeah.
And I also just mentioned too, he seems to be the first that I've seen of a prominent scientist who's not particularly a young Earth or old Earth creationist. He's more just a creationist, kind of like
He tends to be in the middle somewhere, yeah.
He's in the,
Mhm.
definitely.
Whereas Dr. Ross was really more of a old earther. But anyway, I'm not saying anything wrong with that. It's fine. I'm a young earther, and when we get to heaven, I'll be knocking on any of your doors who thinks it's an old earth and saying, I told you so.
That does remind me of something, though. There's a kid that went to Sunday school.
Uh-huh.
He comes home and talks to his dad, and he says, Dad, I learned in Sunday school that we were created in God's image. And the father says, yes, you're right, we are. We're created in God's image. And he goes, well, but Mom says we're descended from apes. And the father says, well, she's talking about her side of the family, not ours.
All right. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I was just curious if anybody saw the movie that came out last weekend, The Story of Everything.
We did. Me and Daniel went to see it.
Did you go see it?
Yeah, that was very, very good. I loved it. I loved every minute. I loved those guys. Dr. Lennox, Stephen Meyer, Josh Axe, Doug Axe. Several other guys that I've read their books, and I love seeing them and having them demonstrate how obvious it is that we were created, that we didn't evolve. There was none of that nonsense that ever happened. And these guys are PhD scientists that are talking about that. And I absolutely love the movie. What did you think?
I haven't seen it.
Haven't seen it yet? Okay.
I'm familiar with most of the arguments.
Yeah.
In fact, and I forget exactly what it's called right now, Kinesian motor protein. I think they have a clip in the trailer.
They do, yes.
And it's in the movie.
Yes.
That's actually viewing that little guy inside. It's amazing.
Yes.
What brought me to Christianity? Someday maybe I give my testimony, but I saw that thing walking along those nanotubes.
Yes. Correcting everything. Yes.
Well, yeah. Anyway,
Mhm.
But that just convinced me that there was a creator. I mean, you can't look at that and not believe it wasn't designed. It's like a little robot just walking along.
Right.
It's incredible. And then from there, I became born again Christian.
Tell us about your testimony, because that's interesting to me, because I talk to atheists about that all the time. And the evolution is, I tell them that's your Bible. They don't like that, but that's what I tell them. And it's trying to say that these things happened all by accident. Me personally, I think you telling a teenager that he's a product of accident is not helping him any. The fact that he's created for a purpose, that gives him reason to believe that there is a purpose on his life. But tell us about your testimony. That's interesting. I'd love to hear it.
Well, my testimony. In a nutshell, I was brought up in a very conservative Christian family. I was a missionary to Japan. When I came back, I fell out of the church for about 20 years. I was just lost. And I was seeking God during that time, but I wasn't practicing Christianity or anything. And I would pray continuously for God to show himself to me.
Mm-hmm.
And one day on YouTube, I saw that video. And because my father, who is also a young earth creationist, and so am I.
Okay.
He's big into that. He would send me like links to creation.com and
Yes.
ICR.
Uh-huh.
And anyway, creation.com had a link to that video. So I clicked on it, and I saw this thing walking along, and it literally walks. And it's using ATP as an energy source, and it's just incredible. It's a little robotic, microcellular organism. It's incredible. And then, anyway, I don't want to get into the weeds, but that convinced me of a designer. Right?
Yeah.
And from there, I did some, I had all the Christian background. I looked into the evidence of the resurrection, and that really convinced me that Christ was who he said he was.
Okay.
And from there, his Christ's own words, he established the validity and the legitimacy of the Bible as a whole. He quoted Genesis, the Old Testament.
On a regular basis, yeah.
Yeah.
Quoted.
And so I had an insatiable desire to read the Bible. I just couldn't put it down.
Yeah.
And I went back to church, and here I am.
That sounds a lot like mine, Bill. I was writing down the same word, except for I wasn't a Christian. I was anything but. But when the event happened that made me turn around and start paying attention, the first thing I did was the same thing. I said, okay, well, I hope this book's true, but is it? How is any of this stuff true? And I went on to the search through apologetics. I didn't even know what that meant when I first started looking at it. But the first time I went to this church to buy a Bible, I bought it there. I brought it home, read it. I thought, start to start. And then somebody told me, no, you don't start at the start, Kelly. Go to Gospel of John. I said, where's that at? So anyway, I found it, and I read it, and I read that. And I thought, okay, well, this is all nice, but is any of it true? So back to the same place to buy something that, okay, show me that this is true. That's what I asked God to do. Show me this stuff's true. And when I went into the bookstore, this is how long ago it was, they had a big display on for Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. And I didn't know anything about the book, because again, I'd been a Christian for me about maybe a month. But it's okay, there it is right there. It says Case for Christ. That's what I want. So I took that home and read it. And basically the same thing, as I read different books, it came more and more clear that the idea that this could all come about by accident is just pure nonsense. There's no way that could happen. And that's what the story of everything is all about. That movie's about that, 100%. And it got guys that wrote books. Irreducible Complexity is in there as well. The fact that, the cell is something that is so irreducibly complex. If you try to take the cell apart into the parts and scatter the parts, it doesn't work anymore. It's just, it's nothing anymore. And that fact was one of the ones that just kept pounding at me, that this is true, and it's fact. And that's just the sidetrack. What it says in this book is our life is important, and Jesus was important enough to go to the cross to do it. Finding out the fact that this is true, that's somewhat important. But once you do, then it's important for us to go out and talk to people about it, because that rapture is coming, and we need to have as many people as possible say, "Oh, dang, those stupid Christians, they were right."
Yes.
It really is going to be a time when they all disappear. And we'll have some more people that come to faith. But anyway, yeah, that was an interesting story. Thanks for sharing that, Bill. Anybody else?
Yeah, just
Questions? Yeah.
another observation
Brian.
that when it would seem to me that people who are atheists are people of faith and don't realize it. Because to believe that all this happened and not believe that God created it, to me that's a huge step of faith, to try and figure out how did it happen.
Well,
Right.
Frank Turek has
Yeah,
a whole
just gonna
series
say,
defending
yeah.
defending the faith. It's an apologetic series, and it's called "I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist."
Yeah, that's how Frank terms it. Yeah.
And in order to be an atheist, you have an incredible amount of faith, because
Yeah,
there's
I mean,
just
with the
so
Bible
much
right here,
junk.
it's like read it and believe it. But
Mhm.
the atheists don't have this book in front of them that's got all this information.
Yeah, very true.
I love the argument. If you're an atheist and you're wrong, what have you lost? If you're a Christian and you're wrong, what have you lost? So
Yeah, it's Pascal's. Yeah.
Argument.
Yeah,
It's that's such a serious thing to think about.
it is. And he made a great explanation of it. He was talking to an atheist, and he said, Pascal's argument is this. He said, if I'm right and I live my life, I'm living my life well. You go by God's plan of getting married, stay married, and continue your life that way. Your life's going to go pretty well. And if I'm wrong at the end, I've still lived my life, and my life is really good. On you, on the other hand, if you live your life without God being there, maybe your life's nice until that point. But if God does exist at that point, you're in a whole lot of trouble. So that was his argument, this Pascal's argument, and it's a valid argument, absolutely. Anybody else? Yeah, Daniel.
So we just mentioned here on the handout that where it says seeing Messiah in First Testament men. First Testament men sounds like a men's group,
We didn't get to that, did we? We didn't even mention that part. Yeah, that was on the handout there. Yeah, Charlie.
I see that Noah's ark and the saving of the 8 people on there is one of God's way of removing believers before his wrath. And I see that as
rapture. Yeah.
Paul says we've been saved from wrath. So I believe that's a part that when the rapture occurs, God's going to take his believers out before his wrath comes on them. So I'm a pre-tribulation.
He provides us an escape. He provides us a way.
He does.
The other interesting thing is, I think the year that Noah took off, is the same year that the last other believer on earth was saved. I mean, died.
Mhm,
That was
yes.
Methuselah.
Yes.
Methuselah, yeah.
So it's interesting that once he died,
Yeah.
the floods came.
And can you imagine the parents of Methuselah if they knew that every time the kid got a cold? No, you're okay. You're okay. Really. What do we need to do for you? You know,
Oh, you
keep
ever
you
wonder if
inside.
Methuselah was going, you know what, you missed a spot right there.
That's right. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's a really good argument for the rapture. I think you're right, Charlie. I think that's a very good argument.
It's one of many.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in particular, the fact that God is rescuing those people out of that the thoughts of evil continually all the time, and the rapture is going to have that way. And from what the Bible describes as a rapture, that's what's going to happen. It's gotten to the point where nobody believes anymore. The love of many have grown cold, and that's what appears is where we're heading now. I hope we don't head there too fast. I don't know. I'd like to go home.
Oh,
So
we had there
maybe
fast.
so. Yeah.
Christ will return fast.
Isn't there going to be some sort of, I've always thought about the fact that within the church, there's going to be a separation of the sheep and the goats. And
Yeah.
so I don't know that the tribulation necessarily, because I'm also of the belief that we're going to be out of here before the tribulation, but I also think that there's going to be a trying period, like the purified gold, you turn the heat up, you get the
Mhm.
dross off the top.
Yeah.
And so is that something that you think may happen with the church, or are we doing that right now?
Well, the churches, and I mean, there's still good churches, and I believe this is one of them. There's still good churches around, but as we know, there's a bunch of churches that are in complete blasphemy, having
They'll still be meeting with their LGBTQ story
Yeah.
hours.
exactly. They're having homosexual men as the leader of the church,
Lesbians.
and lesbians, and people that only have certain portions of the Bible that they believe, and those are around.
Or
You
just
can
think
find them.
that Christianity is a good philosophy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
nothing more.
And yeah, it's really nice, but it's not really story. It's just an allegory. All of those things, and in particular in Genesis, that's all just an allegory. That didn't really happen. Jesus talked in Genesis a lot. So if you think that Genesis didn't happen, then you're saying that Jesus was telling us lies. So yeah, I don't believe that. And I think the churches need to get back to the point where they were originally commissioned. Jesus commissioned the church to do what? To gather people unto him, and the church would be to reach out and do that. And that's what the first century Christians
I think
did.
Brian's question is getting at it. Will there be a second judgment for the people during the tribulation after rapture?
I'm not so sure at the outset. I personally think that once the rapture happens, that's going to be one of the most prosperous times on earth, because all this stuff that the Christians owned, what's going to happen with that stuff? Somebody's going to give it away to people, right?
So the rapture will be the separation of the sheep and the goats.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the case. And I think as the rapture goes along, in particular, once the tribulation, once it gets to the midpoint, then things are going to get really bad. I think that's when everything turns around and gets really bad. I think leading up to that, I personally think that the way the world thinks about things are going to be great. All these people are going to have all this extra stuff that they never had before because the Christians are all gone. And I think that's going to be good until then, and then things are going to go very badly after a while. But anyway, anybody else?
We've been going through the book of Revelation in our men's Bible fellowship.
Yep.
As I see the separation of the sheep and goats, it's at the second coming of Christ. Jesus talked about that in Matthew.
Matthew 25?
25.
Yeah.
Two will be working in the field, one will be taken.
The other left.
Two will be grinding at a mill, one will be taken.
And the other one will be going, I got to do all the work now.
Yeah.
So the ones that are taken are actually the goats. The sheep are left behind to go into the millennium kingdom.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. Yeah. This book has a tremendous amount of stories in it. We're just scratching the surface.
Oh yeah.
But we're going to go into next month, not next week, next month. I think we're going to be going into if you ask a Jewish person who's the biggest picture of Messiah, they're going to say David. So I think the next one we're going to go into is David, and maybe we'll talk about Isaac and his pictures of what he was about. So that'll be for next month. So who wants to pray us out? You want to pray us out, Dirk?
I will pray us out.
All right.
Dear Heavenly Father, we do thank and praise you for the time that we had today to study your word and draw closer to you, Lord, to show ourselves approved, Lord. And Lord, as we go out of this place and encounter those who don't know you, Lord, may we be bold in speaking the truth about who you are. Lord, that we may plant a seed, that it may be watered and may grow to fruition. Lord, you've called us to be disciples, to be apostles. We pray that we'll be worthy of that calling. Guide us and keep us the rest of this week. Bless us as we come to your house to worship tomorrow and to seek your face even more. Hold us in your arms. We ask this in the name of Christ alone. Amen.
Amen.